guys, welcome back. My name's Nathan and today I'm going to be discussing the Taylor Hall Sweepstakes and which NHL team I think will ultimately trade for it. Now the Taylor Hall trade landscape, especially in the past week, has been just a little bit crazy. We see multiple teams go on, back off, see a trade being imminent and then a trade not even happen. There's been a lot of insanity over the past week. But to me, which trade will end up happening, what could we potentially see in a Taylor Hall trade, and which team do I see actually pulling the trigger and getting a trade done? Watch till the end for all the answers, and of course, subscribe if you're new. Now, I'm not going to come out in this video and say that I'm an Elliot Friedman or a Chris Johnston. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't have any sources. But from what we've seen in the past 24 hours from multiple people that actually do have sources, there's quite a big divide between the teams that are actually going for him and, of course, the teams that have kind of backed down a little. Now, when it comes to the main contenders right now, you got St. Louis, Arizona, Colorado, and potentially the Edmonton Oilers. For the teams that have kind of gone back a little bit, you have recently the Florida Panthers, the Dallas Stars, and the Montreal Canadiens. Now, it just shows how crazy and unexpected these Hall trade talks have been that a team like Florida is now on the downtrend of teams that are interested. We saw a recent tweet by Pierre LeBrun just an hour ago this morning saying things could change, but what I'm hearing this morning is that the Florida Panthers are no longer in the mix for Taylor Hall. I think their interest was tied to the idea of signing him, or at least thinking they could eventually sign him. Otherwise, too big of a price for a rental. And here I was this morning thinking I'd put Hall in a Florida Panthers jersey in the thumbnail, you know, have him as one of my favorites, but now they're not even interested in him anymore, which just shows how crazy this can be. An underdog team could come out and swoop Hall at any moment right now. It really is that wide open. Now, with all that out of the way, and without further ado, I'm just going to get into the elephant in the room. These guys, the Arizona Coyotes, and obviously I'm decked out in Kachina gear because it's freaking beautiful. And as a guy who likes the Coyotes quite a bit, I would like Taylor Hall on that team. But the problem is that Arizona has been the favorite for Taylor Hall for about a couple of days now, but a trade has not happened. In a new article by Elliot Friedman, there was a lot of new info to come out on that situation, and it doesn't exactly give me too much hope that Hall will end up being a Coyote. Now, in Elliot Friedman's new article about this whole situation, he talked a little bit in depth about what the Arizona and New Jersey offers were going from. And one of the big things is that either Victor Soderstrom or Barrett Hayton were actually offered by either New Jersey or Arizona. But instead, the second round pick in 2018, Kevin Ball, who was going to play on the World Junior team for Team Canada, was the main piece in that deal. Now, he says the last two first round picks, Soderstrom and Hayton, but he doesn't mention a first round pick for this next year. I would assume that likely would be part of the package. And then he also goes on to say that Arizona wants to give up more future assets rather than players on their team right now, but then also goes on to say that New Jersey will want more of a right now package with a couple of players maybe being ready for the NHL squad. That is a big divide there. Arizona doesn't want to give up NHL ready players and New Jersey wants those kind of players. A trade is pretty unlikely to happen. It's just a weird situation to me, especially when it comes to the Coyotes, because he would be such a great fit for them, I think, having such a great offensive option. He might not stay there long term, that obviously isn't a guarantee, and I think that's why Arizona is kind of reserved in their judgment, but when you can add a guy like that to bolster your offense so much, they already did it with Phil Kessel, they already pulled the trigger last summer, so I don't understand why they wouldn't do it here. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think Arizona is the top dog, the main contender to actually pull the trigger. They might be the team talking the most in New Jersey about a trade, but I just don't see it happening, especially compared to a couple other teams that I'll mention in this video. I would love to see Hall on Arizona. I would love to see him stay there long term, be an offensive beast for them, but I just don't see a trade actually happening and New Jersey and Arizona actually agreeing on something, which is the most important part. Now, going to a team that surprisingly might be more interested and maybe more likely than the Arizona Coyotes, now going to another Pacific Division team, that being the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I know, it's crazy, it's weird because we haven't heard that much about Edmonton, especially in the last week. But recently, in like the last 24 hours, we've seen a couple of people from the Edmonton media saying that Taylor Hall could potentially be a guy going back to Edmonton, and that is a lot more likely than we thought. Now, Jason Gregor said this: Holland has always been interested in acquiring Hall. He and Shiro have had talks for the past 3 weeks. Whether their offer is as good as what other teams' offers remain to be seen. Is he willing to outbid other teams is the bringing question. And I think Edmonton was always a team contending for Taylor Hall. I don't think they were always truly out, but I didn't really expect them to, one, have the cap space, or two, give up the assets to get a guy like Taylor Hall. But with Arizona not even wanting to give up Kevin Ball, I think a team like Edmonton could swoop in and get him lickety-split. Yes, I just said lickety-split and now I regret everything in life, but you know what I mean. But I see Edmonton as sort of unlikely as well, because it was also reported on top of Broberg and Bouchard that they don't want to give up their 2020 first round pick, which I think would be a huge part of any trade for Taylor Hall. So I don't know what Edmonton wants to give up in a trade like that. Maybe they give up a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, which would be interesting. But if they're not going to give up a first round pick or any prospects at that point, I'm not sure if New Jersey's even going to want to do business with them. Obviously, they've talked between amongst themselves, Shiro and Cal Holland, but it just doesn't seem like a trade is too realistic. Especially for New Jersey, I think there would be much better offers on the table, less cap you'd have to take back as well, and just better teams you could send Taylor Hall to. Yes, Edmonton would be a perfect fit, I think. It would be a beautiful reunion, but I just don't see Edmonton giving up the assets to actually get Taylor Hall. And another good point comes up with teams like this, because it was confirmed by Darren Ferris, Taylor Hall's agent, that he doesn't want to talk an extension before July 1st. That is 100% putting New Jersey in a rough position, because it definitely decreases Taylor Hall's value. But for a team like Edmonton, what's the incentive to get a guy like Taylor Hall and to trade all these picks and all these prospects for a guy that won't even talk to you about an extension before free agency? It's basically just Russian roulette at that point. And there's also the side of Taylor Hall where he has had a rough season but an unlucky one, and if you do end up trading for him, you likely get the best of Taylor Hall rather than what he's shown in the past, the last calendar year. And there's just so much to go on here when it comes to the situation, and for a team like Edmonton, I don't blame them not giving up a first round pick or a Broberg or a Bouchard, because right now it's just a wild card. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. Now, going on to the next team that is full on in the Taylor Hall sweepstakes, another team that might be the most likely out of the teams I've mentioned so far, that being the St. Louis Blues. Now, the St. Louis Blues sit at $20,000 in cap space. Yeah, last time I checked, that's not enough to get Taylor Hall, but they have the prospects, they have the picks, and they're once again going for it this year, trying to get back-to-back cups, and a guy like Taylor Hall would certainly help their cause. And yes, they have no cap space whatsoever, but a big reason why I think the trade is a lot more likely, especially for a team like St. Louis, is because of their desire to get a big fish like that. And again, when you win, you want to win more, and St. Louis wants to win more. Especially with Vladimir Tarasenko going off with that big injury, he could be sidelined for some of the playoffs as well. And I think St. Louis would love to bring in a new big fish, a new big guy to fill in some of those holes. And Taylor Hall could definitely do that and play even better. Yes, it would be a lot of risk, but if there is one team to have him as a pure rental, the St. Louis Blues might just be that team. And on top of the rental situation in St. Louis wanting to go for it, you also have a pretty solid prospect pool that could serve New Jersey very well. You have Klim Kostin, an up-and-coming guy who could be on New Jersey's roster as soon as he's traded. A guy like Jordan Kyrou, Joel Hofer, a very solid goaltending prospect who New Jersey could definitely use right now. I think there's just a bunch of options for St. Louis, and even if they do go with New Jersey's more NHL player route, they have a lot of solid depth players that I think New Jersey could definitely use, and they have some cap there to make a trade work on top of the 50% retention that New Jersey would already have on Taylor Hall. Now, going to the final main contender, similar situation to the St. Louis Blues, that being the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche have far and away the most cap space out of any of the four teams I've mentioned, right now sitting at $5.9 million. That is just shy than Taylor Hall's actual cap hit with no salary retained. But for New Jersey, if they do want to go with more NHL-ready players, I think Colorado still has those type of guys, and a trade could potentially happen. Now, I do not think that Bowen Byram Byram is even involved in trade talks at this point. I think Taylor Hall's value has gone down quite a bit since the past couple of weeks, and I don't think Bowen Byram is even considered right now. I think it's more along the lines of Alex Newhook, maybe even Connor Timmins in a trade like that. And with New Jersey, if they still want a guy like Kevin Ball in front of Connor Timmins or an Alex Newhook, I'm not even sure if those two guys are in play. So for Colorado, they could still end up getting him for a pretty solid price. And I know that Colorado doesn't need another star forward. They already have those type of guys. But when you can add a guy like Taylor Hall, even as a rental, I think a team like Colorado should do that. But also, at the same time, it is kind of a similar situation to in Arizona, where they might kind of counter and weigh the negatives and the positives in a situation like that, because I think for Colorado it might be more beneficial if they make a couple of trades here, get more depth, especially on the defensive end, and work that way. That's why a team like Montreal isn't even considered at this point, because they are heavily in the defenseman market right now. But a player like Taylor Hall, I still think has a wonderful chance on being on Colorado, even if it is just a rental. If you could get the edge on teams like St. Louis, teams like Washington and Boston, and a guy like Taylor Hall, he is, let alone the only star really that could potentially be traded this trade deadline. And if Colorado were to get him, that would just boast a wonderful offense. On top of McKinnon, Landeskog, and Ranston, you have Taylor Hall, which just makes that power play a lot more scary. But we also don't want to forget about the teams that were once in on Taylor Hall that could potentially be back. It seems like every team that's in on Taylor Hall right now, there's two teams that have backed up on him. But for the three teams that I mentioned, the Florida Panthers, the Dallas Stars, and the Montreal Canadiens, those teams to me are the most interesting, because you could see a pattern there that Taylor Hall won't solve their problems. First, starting out with the Montreal Canadiens, who were the main contenders for him pretty much a few weeks back. Now they've kind of went off a little bit and are now in the defensive market, which I think is a smart move for them. You see a team like Dallas, who was one of the main contenders just a week back. They are now not even existent. It seems like they're not even mentioned anymore. And I think they also don't need him either. I think depth offense will be a much better move for them as a Dallas Stars fan. I think that would be the much better move there. Not taking on Taylor Hall and then signing him for $11 million. And also a two-team like Florida, which would only make sense if they were to move him for like a Mike Hoffman and maybe give up a couple of prospects and upgrade to a guy like Taylor Hall. But that team does not need offense and has never needed offense. But to me, the four teams locked and loaded right now are Arizona, Edmonton, Colorado, and St. Louis. And to me, those will be the four teams that are the most contending for him. And I see one of them out of those four teams actually getting it done this year. And out of those four teams, the contending teams that I mentioned in this video, I think honestly the St. Louis Blues, to me at least, are the most likely to pull the trigger and actually get it done. To me, they are the team that will win the Taylor Hall sweepstakes. They have the reason to get Taylor Hall. They have really the motivation to get Taylor Hall as a rental, whatever it might be. They have the prospects, the cap space, and the players to make it work. And I feel like New Jersey, being the other team in the Eastern Conference, that trade would just be a match made in heaven. And for a team like St. Louis, which wants to bolster their chances to go back to back, there's no better guy on the market right now than Taylor Hall. And to me, if there's any team discarding Colorado, Edmonton, and the Arizona Coyotes, I think it is the St. Louis Blues who end up trading for Taylor Hall. But that'll be it for today's video, guys. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and of course, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below your thoughts on the Taylor Hall sweepstakes and where you think he ends up landing. Of course, share this video with your friends. Get the word out there about the Taylor Hall sweepstakes, because it's about to go down, boys. My name's Nathan, and I'll see you on the next video or stream. Goodbye.